begin with big news today on trade, where President Trump inked a historic rebalancing of trade with the European Union, ending decades of Americans getting ripped off at the expense of everyone else. Here's President Trump over the weekend. Watch.
We're not invited. We're not, I don't know if the word is not allowed or just, you just kept them out somehow, right? But cars will be, we have some cars that do terrific business and we do really well with the pickup trucks, with the SUVs. We have some great things. And I think the people of Europe will have some diversification. I think that'll make them happy. So I think maybe cars would be the one that would go the biggest. And the second would be agriculture, the farmers. And we'll do it in very strict conjunction with the president and the European Union. And they're coming into our country with great vigor. And I think they're going to make a lot of money with this. I think everybody is. I think and again, it's going to bring a lot of unity and friendship. It's going to work out really well.
For decades, America has had an enormous trade deficit with the EU, and this is now a fundamental structural change that will level the playing field. Here's U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer with more. Take a look.
About this trade deal with the EU, the President Trump announced yesterday. He certainly viewed it as a win. Some in Europe view it as sort of a tough but fair deal. Give us some of the basics.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on. I think your encapsulation there is entirely accurate. This is a deal that is important for both countries. This is an enormous trading relationship. The EU is the largest destination for our exports. They send an enormous amount of exports to the United States. We have had an enormous trade deficit with the EU for a very long time. And a lot of that has been because the EU has historically had higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers on the United States. And this deal changes that. It is a structural change in the U.S.-EU trade relationship in favor of rebalancing. So the United States is going to have an opportunity to finally have improved market access. The EU acknowledges that, the legitimacy of the U.S. complaints, and we're going to be able to move forward on a much stronger footing with the EU in our trade relationship.
And even comedian Bill Maher is giving the president credit, saying this about tariff policy. Watch.
I remember along with probably most people, was saying at the beginning, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time, and they didn't.
I love the honesty. And joining me now, one of my favorite people, Power of the Future founder, Daniel Turner. Thank you so much for being with me back on the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Kimberly, anytime.
All right. Well, so President Trump, as you heard in the lead up here, just secured a huge trade deal. What does it mean to the country, to the economy, et cetera?
Yeah, and part of this deal was $750 billion worth of energy, American energy purchases by the EU. So it's a huge paradigm shift from the past administration, especially when it comes to energy. You recall those images of Joe Biden going to Saudi Arabia, asking them to produce more oil. We sent emissaries to Venezuela and to Iran, lifting their sanctions and asking them to produce more oil. And now you have an American president who's traveling the world, kind of mandating that those countries purchase our energy and them complying with it. And so rather than be in begging mode, America is now in selling mode and opening up more markets for American goods is always going to be a positive thing for our economy, for our energy industry, for our farmers, for industry writ large. So it's just a huge paradigm shift of what America First actually means when it comes to American goods and services going on the global stage.
You know, and how does it compare to what we saw under Joe Biden and his administration?
Yeah, it's just, again, remarkable to think of how he went hat in hand. There's that image of him masked up during COVID where he fist bumped Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, where he was asking them to produce more oil. Have that sense of, hey, we need you guys to bail us out. America is in a leadership role. And I think that, again, on a paradigm shift, it sends a message to other signals. I don't think Joe Biden, even though this is totally unrelated, but it's integral, I don't think Joe Biden would have resolved a Thailand-Cambodia border dispute in an afternoon. And yet President Trump did. And he said he made a couple of phone calls and he made them some offers and they agreed to a ceasefire. The reason why, I don't even think most people knew there was a border dispute going on between Cambodia and Thailand, or a violent one at that. But the reason why he was able to shut it down is because that is what leadership does. That is what strength does. And America is in a position now of strength and leadership that even countries who don't make the regular news, like the Cambodia-Thailand border dispute, listen to this president and get in line.
So, you know, even liberals like Bill Maher have some nice things to say. Yeah, you heard that. And I was like, wow. But you know what? I appreciate the honesty. I didn't think I'd ever see that. How about you?
No, and I would like to think I'd be honest enough if Biden did something I agreed with, or if Obama had. I mean, I clearly have my political tendencies, but I do want to see America succeed, and I'll celebrate a win where a win is a win. It's just that I didn't really find any, and I'm sure there are some that I'm just not remembering right now. But it would be really naive and really pathetic. I didn't watch The View today. I know that may surprise you. I'm sure the ladies of The View disagreed. I'm sure they found a reason why this trade deal is ultimately bad or racist or xenophobic or sexist or something. But so they're going to try to spin this up as a huge loss. But it's really hard to have to play these types of games. And also, it must be quite exhausting after a while when you're constantly trying to see a win as a negative, and you're constantly trying to spin turmoil and outrage. It's why the left overall is just a genuinely unhappy and bitter people, because you can't live like that and not just be affected by that constant negativity.
You know, and as you said, you know, Biden, energy policy emboldened, quite frankly, the world's, worst actors. How is that changing, in your opinion? I know we're also unlocking critical minerals up in Alaska as well.
Yeah, the critical minerals part is huge because China controls around 90% of that market. Either they own the mines directly for the rare earths and the metals and minerals, or they have a proxy country. Like, everyone keeps pointing out the statistic that Chile is the world's largest producer of copper, and they are, but the Chilean mines are owned by China, so it's really just China in the end. This is a huge shift in terms of geopolitics. When President Trump has streamlined the opening of American mines, a lot of executive orders pointed toward this, and his big three secretaries of Zeldin, Burgum, and Wright have made opening up these mines a priority. And that's great because it puts China on notice that they're losing their cornering of this market. It's put places like Iran on notice that not only is their nuclear facility in shambles, but the sanctions are back on their oil. And President Trump has said he would love to lift them if they would just comply with other aspects of their global terrorist regime. So energy is a huge leverage point that can be used against these world actors. Asking the European Union to purchase $750 billion worth of energy means that they're not going to buy it from places like Iran, from places like Russia. And making those countries weaker is better for the world, and it's better for world peace.
You know, meanwhile, good old Al Gore, right, recently spoke at WEF comparing boiling oceans to the Hiroshima atomic bombs. What is going on here?
I saw this over the weekend, and Just I hate to rage tweet so early in the
I
morning
know, but it's
Saturday, and I saw
fun.
he was at the World Economic Forum in Brasilia. I don't know how he got to Brazil without fossil fuels, but that's another question.
Yeah.
And just the same
Magic.
old speech. Yeah, the same old boring speech of climate change and world emissions, and we're all gonna die, and no one takes this seriously, and you know, I not long ago I read that that movie which he was instrumental in making, The Day After Tomorrow. That movie's 20 years old, right? Jake Gyllenhaal was 19 or 20 when it came out. I mean, that movie's old, and that movie was like Al Gore, peak Al Gore. Like the climate change is coming any minute, and it is going to destroy our nation. And so you hit a certain age, I'm definitely there, that Al Gore yammering about the same boring stuff for 30, 40 years now, it's just beyond ridiculous. It's now just pathetic, and it's angering, because every time they've implemented even little tiny bits of their green agenda, all it has brought is market chaos, poverty, misery, and it's made places like Iran and Russia very strong. So Saturday morning, yeah, that was not how I wanted to wake up and see that fool on a global. And who would listen to Al Gore on a world stage, right? Those poor people in the audience, that's punishment enough, having to listen to Al Gore.
Well, that's actually pretty true but he's been sort of like quiet for a while, and then all of a sudden, boom, pops right up. So let's talk about this. How much of this, climate agenda is really the China agenda?
That's a great point. There have been some really big exposés in the last couple of weeks, even, of how much China has funded climate change, especially in the great state of California. There's a think tank called the China California Climate Initiative, that heavily funded even Governor Newsom's trip over to China to see solar panel factories and talk about climate change, et cetera, et cetera. So China's always been very influential in the climate agenda. A lot of nonprofits have illegal ties to Chinese money. They don't disclose it. They use third-party funders to hide the China paper trail. Back in 2020, there was even an investigation by the Trump DOJ into some of these groups and how they don't register as Chinese operatives. They hide their money, but they're doing China's bidding. And it makes sense that China would do this, because the greener America goes, the more we need to buy wind and solar and lithium batteries, and China makes all of that. The more we have to buy green products that require the rare earths and the metals and minerals, and China controls those markets. So China would love to see the world go green. Of course, China talks about climate change, because the climate agenda has benefited their economy tremendously.
Tremendously. So let me tell you this. I remember, because on the 5, we talked about it. We added it up one time, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 75. We mentioned Solyndra. Do you remember Solyndra, the whole solar power? That was a big scam.
It
Crazy.
was, and there are lots of cylinders out there. And as the Inflation Reduction Act came to light, and all of these groups were popping up, starting wind companies and solar companies, well, those subsidies have all disappeared, and they're going to default, and that's going to be tragic. And that's something we can talk about and should talk about, right? There are Americans who got a ton of tax dollars to start a solar panel company in Michigan, and now without the money, that solar panel company is going to disappear. And people are going to run on that, and they're going to make it a campaign issue, and they're going to say, Donald Trump and the Republicans cost Americans their jobs. But we can't suddenly all be Keynesians, right? We can't suddenly say the purpose of the federal government is to prop up businesses that would never survive in the free market. And Solyndra was a true example of that. And it's tragic, because people's lives were ruined by Solyndra. But that's also why we're $37 trillion in debt, because government can't run businesses. They can't remodel the Federal Reserve building. They can't build high-speed rails. There are certain things government can't do, and choosing winners and losers in the marketplace is one of them.
Yeah, and the Biden administration spent $7.5 billion on a program to install electric vehicle charging stations. They've installed a few hundred at most, and it's not even clear if they work. I mean, what is this? Is it incompetence? Is it fraud? Is it both?
It's a little bit of everything, and it's also just a lot of money get thrown into the marketplace.
Scam.
And the Inflation Reduction Act was. It was a trillion plus dollars of green money that was just thrown out there, and everyone clamored for it. Joe Biden promised 500,000 charging stations. He got the money for it. They built a few hundred, which aren't even connected to the grid, right? There was a $42 billion program to bring broadband to rural communities. Not one person was connected to broadband. Where did the money go? Who the hell knows? Where did the high-speed rail money go? Who the hell knows? There were so many promises that were made. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, paradigm shift. The wins for the Biden administration was government spending with government promises of building things. The wins for the Trump administration is private spending and the private sector investing in America. And that's a mental shift, a paradigm shift that we have to be on board with. The left loves big government, but big government hasn't delivered anything. And the 4 years of Biden are proof of that.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that. You're right about, I don't know, I haven't seen one thing wrong yet, Daniel Turner. Undefeated for the American people. It's so good to see you. We really wanted to talk to you today, so I appreciate you making the time. Tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, get involved, get more information.
Yeah, powerthefuture.com. You can find all this information there. Or if you have a question, email me, daniel@powerthefuture.com. I always reply to emails, and so happy to talk to anyone who wants to talk fossil fuels or climate or energy or any of these fun things.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, Kimberly.
All right, be good. We're going to continue covering all of this and much more coming up. And in the meantime, be sure to check out the 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Do not compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 Coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and it is built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. So try 1775 Coffee today. Go to 1775coffee.com/KG, and you will get, my friend, 15% off of your first order. Why not? Delish. Now, President Trump continues to prove the experts wrong and rewrite the rules on global trade, on taxes, on American energy, and so much more. And joining me now for more continuing coverage on all of this, Daily Signal contributor Jarrett Stepman. Thank you so much for being on the program. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
All right. We love it. We love it. When you're a winner, we have you back. So we got a lot to cover. First off, now VP Vance was in Ohio earlier today, talked about a broken style of politics among Democrats and their opposition to middle-class tax cuts, among other things. What message stands out to you?
Yeah, the thing is with Democrats, I don't think they have much of a message at all right now. I mean, I think there's a reason why there was a recent poll that came out showing them having the lowest ratings for any point in their near history in 3 decades. I think the problem with Democrats is they're very much following their very left-wing activist base right now on a lot of different issues. One of the primary examples within the Democrat Party is a man running for mayor in New York City, Mamdani, who is, I would consider a champagne socialist who is going to events in Uganda with obviously funded by his very wealthy parents and close confidants. Doesn't seem to really care about the working people of New York City. And so I think that the Democrat message is very confused right now. I think at one time they used to consider themselves the party of the working man, the kind of FDR style Democrats. But I think that's a long time ago. I think the party has changed very much now. It's now the party of, you could say, the ruling elite, the institutions, and many of those institutions that failed the American people, not just in the last 4 years, but really for decades. And so I think that's why the Democrat Party is completely listless. And you have J.D. Vance, the vice president, going to places like Ohio and Pennsylvania, places that were considered part of the Rust Belt, which maybe shouldn't be considered much longer. Maybe we should consider the cyber and steel belt now, because so much investment is now coming into those state economies. So I think Republicans now have a winning message amongst working Americans, and Democrats just seem, frankly, out of touch.
You know, and how does this, EU trade and tariff deal factor into all of this, in terms of real day-to-day impact? What can we expect?
It's the massive now foreign investment coming into the United States. I mean, President Trump has really prioritized it. It's not just the EU. It's Japan that just recently had a major investment into the United States, hundreds of billions of dollars that we had money coming in from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, from United Arab Emirates, and many other different countries. Those are direct investments into the United States. They're going to be buying American energy product, American natural gas, American oil. That means they're not buying it from other countries. So it has a component that it helps the average American. It's not just one small sector of the American economy. It's really a broad-based thing. It helps rebuild America's industrial base, and it helps with a lot of our foreign policy goals too. So it really these are massive investments in the American people, and I think it shows the strength of really the position that the United States holds globally. Other countries want access to the United States. They want to invest. The United States is the best investment that you can make, and that's really happening right now.
True.
And I do think that we're seeing a real revival in this country, a real optimism that I think was gone for a long time.
I think you're absolutely right. Spot on, spot on. So meanwhile, a Biden-appointed judge, ruled that Congress can't defend Planned Parenthood because it might lead to unintended pregnancies. Is this I don't even know what's going on here. The most baseless ruling in recent memory? What is happening?
It's one of the most egregious rulings I've ever seen. I mean, even the idea of an activist judge twisting the law, I don't think that even applies here, because basically she's saying that a judge should be setting policy. I mean, that's the job of elected members of Congress. I mean,
Exactly.
I would assume we still have a republic, but this is not the judicial
They don't
decision
think
of
so.
somebody who's in a republic. And so it's really quite incredible. And this judge actually is a Massachusetts district judge, has had a number of, I think, radical decisions in the past. She's tried to
Correct.
hold up the defunding of Planned Parenthood. Earlier in the month, she tried to put an injunction on that. She's trying to do so again. I think it will be overruled, but I do think it's the way now that left-wing judges rule. They're not basing this on the Constitution or originalism or any real jurisprudence, other than it's a policy they don't like. And because they're in a position to possibly shut it down, they're just going to take their petty power and do so. And frankly, it's an insult to the way that our courts should work. It's not, frankly, a court actually saying that Congress can't make a law is quite ridiculous. I think it will be struck down, but it represents a certain mindset now that's now hitting the judiciary. It's very dangerous.
And when you look, at the makeup of the left's agenda, it really just actually, in my opinion, relies on weaponizing, right? Government. Instead of actually trying to win over voters and see what your constituents might want, it's pretty alarming.
It is. It's about maintaining left-wing institutional power. I think we saw that maximized during the Biden presidency, where we had basically a deep state presidency that a lot of institutions, I think, forced a lot of policies and ideas onto the American people, ones that turned out not to be at all popular, not to be at all what the American people wanted. And I think we've seen a massive reversal in that. I think the left now is trying to use what institutional power it still has to try to force many of its policies on the American people. But the vibe shift is real, and there's a real political shift happening right now. And a lot of Americans are realizing we no longer have to put up with this. If the universities that get enormous amounts of taxpayer money are out of control, we can withhold our support. I think that's a very genuine thing, especially if they're violating the civil rights of Americans, which in many cases they have. And I think the American people are understanding that we do still have political power in this country. The institutions don't just run everything. This still is a republic. And right now you have a president who's on top of his game. And I think the American people have empowered him in many different areas because of that, because of how obnoxious many of our institutions that became highly ideological and politicized pushed things on Americans that they didn't want. So the backlash is real, and hopefully it's leading, I think, to a restorationist movement in this country.
And you mentioned FDR. These sort of trade deals would have been part of that sort of FDR New Deal Democrat agenda when you actually think about it, if you're being, intellectually honest, right? So what is the history lesson here?
I think the history lesson is how President Donald Trump has used the leverage of the United States to get good deals on our behalf. I think that's what good presidents have done before, whether it was FDR, whether it was Ronald Reagan in the past, using American leverage and showing that. And I think that, look, I think there's been a reset as far as our global trade. And I think it's actually going to ultimately be beneficial, not just to the American people, but a lot of our relationships around the globe, too. It's funny that the left says that President Trump is upending this kind of global order, but in some ways, he's actually saving it from itself, I think, and creating better deals, ones that benefit the American people, that don't benefit, I think, many of our real competitors like communist China, which is in many cases being edged out in some of these deals. I think you have a president who's very much in command of the office and how it should work on behalf of Americans, and creating a trade system that I think benefits more Americans widely rather than narrowly, which I think has been really happened in the last few decades. And so now you have industry coming back. Now you have the Rust Belt no longer being, I think, the Rust Belt. And so I think that's a great thing for the American people, where they feel that they're all bought into this process now, that their government is now working on their behalf instead of against them. And I think that is the lesson here. And I think it is going to restore confidence in our republic, in our institutions.
And there is, a national security point here. I believe it does, send a message to both our allies and, quite frankly, our adversaries.
Very strongly. I think this shows that we now have a president who's more engaged globally, who's not just going to say platitudes, who's going to push a reset button. I think President Trump, create a sense of urgency with a lot of these countries. There's a reason why he brought up all these tariffs at the start of his presidency. He wanted to push. I mean, when it comes to, for instance, the EU, a big part of his push was getting more military investment. You have to invest in your own defense. The United States can't simply basically give coverage to your generous social welfare systems. You actually have to provide for your defense. Now they feel pressured to doing so. I mean, yes, it didn't seem the Russia-Ukraine thing could do it. Now you have a president who's actually pushing them into that. And that's good for the United States, because that means we can focus on other issues, on other concerns. As President Trump has said, there's a big, beautiful ocean between us and there. They should be handling their defense. That makes them a good ally. That's why President Trump has always supported strong allies, because that means that you handle your business, we'll handle ours. We can contain the larger threats like a rising communist China. You can handle your own defense. And I think to a large extent, that's what these agreements are about. It's not just about the tariffs. It's not just about trade. It's about a changing of the relationship between countries. And I think it's been a master class, despite the fact that many of the so-called experts said this was going to be a major disaster, that it was going to collapse the U.S. economy. That hasn't happened at all. If anything, the U.S. economy is stronger than it's been in a long time.
And even Bill Maher, all of a sudden, a wise man admits it as well. Oh,
amazing.
Yeah, he's like, I thought we were screwed this and this. He's like, and actually it worked. But I've told people that it's like they panic about it when they hear the T word. And it's like, no, listen to me. He's using this as a negotiation tool and a tactic to effectuate a better outcome for the United States and a more level playing field. So you just have to sit there and, take it for a second and then wait for the results. And what we've seen is more and more countries coming to the table because they see it. And like we said here, there's a nice counterbalance between that and the impact from a national security perspective as well. So let's talk about this, my friend. What's the next chapter here? What do you expect as we move into the fall on the top issues?
Yeah, I think that the trade thing is going to continue to be a big one. I think President Trump really wants to especially bring it close to many of the military conflicts around the world. I think it's still an open sore for him. The fact that, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, he's continuing to put pressure. In fact, he's moved up the deadline. And there's a lot to be said with that. I think President Trump thinks that for our next golden age, we need more trade deals. We need fewer wars around the globe. He's managed to negotiate his way out of that. And to continue the very important work that he's doing within the federal government. I think there are going to be more rescissions packages. I think there's going to be more reduction in the way that the government spends its money unwisely for the American people, and nibbling around the edges of, I think, our government that has really gone the wrong way for a long time. And so I think continuing to build American strength globally, build it here at home, build up our industry, which is a long-term project. President Trump has talked a lot about revitalizing shipbuilding. I think the tariffs are a large part about that, this investment in steel and building a lot of ships in the U.S. We basically have surrendered that entire market, shipbuilding market, to our chief competitor, communist China. That's not sustainable. That's not how we won World War II. We're now in the position now that Japan was. China's more like us. I think he's setting us forward on a long-term path. And I think we're going to see a continuance of that as we head into the fall in building up those relationships around the globe, setting the U.S. economy straight, and getting a lot done. I mean, it's amazing how much has been done in such a short time. So many promises have ultimately been kept by this president within the first 100 days. It has been absolutely remarkable.
No, I think so. It's a very accurate assessment and, reflection. Just want to touch on this a little bit, more. Yesterday, you saw the president draw a nexus between Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. It feels to me like he is sending a very clear message here.
Very much so. And Venezuela has been known to send many criminal members to the United States. They've been really a sore spot for the U.S. for a long time. And a lot of our enemies around the globe have, of course, had very close ties, including the Russians, including China. And President Trump has really focused on the new world, on the Western Hemisphere, right here on our doorstep. And I think that's where I think a lot of presidencies and executives in the past failed to do so. There's a reason why, right when he came into office, he was talking about the Panama Canal and talking about Greenland. He really cares about what's happening in the Western Hemisphere because it affects us here at home very strongly. We had, of course, a wave of people, illegal immigrants come to the United States, a lot of them from Venezuela, very bad people, criminal people, exacerbated the problem during the Biden presidency. That's an administration there, and really not an administration. I think Vance said that Maduro is not a real president of Venezuela. Basically, this is a corrupt cartel that is taking control of the country and continuing to put pressure on them. I mean, these are bad actors here in the new world that affects the U.S. more strongly than things around the globe. So I think that focus on the Western Hemisphere and our problems right here at home, whether it be Mexico or Central and South America, those are important things, I think, to maintaining U.S. strength. It's a sort of Trump's new Monroe Doctrine, I think you could really call it.
Oh, I like that. Very good, very good, very good. And what else do you think, besides Trump's new Monroe Doctrine, we should keep an eye on, at the Daily Signal, and where can we learn more? People love you, so if they want to follow you, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow my work at dailysignal.com, where a lot of my great colleagues are writing about this and
so
many different issues. We have, I think, a great, you can see Elizabeth Mitchell, who reports on the White House basically every single day. Whenever there's a news conference, we break a lot of stories. We have Virginia Allen, who's done a lot of reporting from Israel. She's talked a lot about the border and some of the crime issues there, has done a remarkable job. Tyler O'Neill, another great colleague of mine, who's done a lot of reporting on the deep state, which is something that we focus on very much at the Daily Signal. And you can find my work at Daily Signal too, and my social media account, which is at Jarrett Stepman on X. So you can follow all of us. I think that Daily Signal punches above its weight in media. I think we've done a great job.
1,000%.
Just in the last 6 months. So we're really building fast. So it's very exciting times for us.
It is exciting. Congratulations to you and all your super talented colleagues. I really enjoy it. That's why we lean heavily on all of your colleagues to come on the program. It's great to listen, to learn, to support you guys, and proud of what you're doing. That is for sure. Jarrett, thank you again for taking the time for all of us today.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Appreciate it.
All right, be good. And we're going to continue covering all of this. We're never going to stop. In closing, President Trump is delivering on trade, taxes, and building a better future. So for far too long, Americans have been taken advantage of by the rest of the world while the swamp cashed in. These are facts. But that day is over. Investment is pouring into America. And the best, some really smart, very sweet girl said this, is yet to come. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms, X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage, and don't miss Don Jr.'s Big Show at 6 p.m. Eastern. I hope